Former Amazon Studios founder Roy Price is calling for a purge of Amazon's TV department and a retcon of the Rings of Power and much more following Jennifer Salke's exit from the company. Roll this up over at phantompulse.com. You can find the link in the description below. We are putting up tons of articles every single day. Don't get to cover all of them over here, so I encourage you to head on over there, become a paid subscriber, and help us bring this to you every single day. We are fully reader funded. So, in a recent post to his Substack, Price shared his advice on what Amazon should do in order to stop losing when it comes to TV. As part of his advice, he called for a purging of the company's TV department, explaining that it has become too big and is relying on consensus decision-making. In fact, he compares it to the Federal Reserve and the federal bureaucracy. While he says that this might be the way you want to operate the Federal Reserve, it is not the way you should be operating Amazon MGM Studios' TV department. Not only did he call for Amazon MGM Studios' TV department to cut down to size, but indicated it needs a new attitude as well. It needs leads that will, or I guess bosses that will, quote, get out their knives, put them in their teeth, and learn how to be nonconformists again. So looking for some go-getters out there who are not going to conform to what current Hollywood is telling them to do. Speaking specifically to the shows on the docket and already in development, Price made it abundantly clear that the type of thinking that created the Rings of Power must be done away with. He said, one thing I would tell this team to do is to completely retcon everything Rings of Power so far. That was an experiment. It is now non-canonical, and we are starting over from scratch. It basically never happened, and we are literally throwing it away. Price even suggests that a single episode of Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne's The Rings of Power may be created where everyone is slaughtered in an orgy of blood that would make John Woo blush, and they are finally eaten by Tom Bombadil, who then larks through the forest covered with gore, saying, hey, doll, merry doll, ring-a-dong, dillo, ring-a-dong, hop along, fall all the willow, Tom Bomb, jolly Tom Bombadillo, to kind of just hit home that this show is such an abomination and it should be done away with. Now, obviously, they shouldn't have anyone that actually wants to embrace that idea moving forward, but I think what Price is saying here is that the show that Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne have made is as ridiculous, terrible as what he's pointing out here, and then saying that it needs to be killed off this way. To be clear, it's not just the Rings of Power he wants to retcon. He wants to retcon any scripts or pre-production done for potential James Bond spinoffs, such as a 008 show, a Moneypenny show, as well as Henry Cavill's Warhammer series and the Red Dead Redemption series, as well as any other that he hadn't thought of that had already been announced. He said all these shows are being developed or redeveloped from scratch. So it's not just retconning Rings of Power. It's basically retconning anything that this mentality infected over there at Amazon TV. So if it infected that Warhammer series, it needs to be redeveloped from scratch. If it infected the Red Dead Redemption series, needs to be redeveloped from scratch. I think they have like a God of War series too. Maybe that's an Apple. I'm not sure. I think there's like a Mass Effect series that's being developed too. I think those are at Amazon too. So you would think those need to be redeveloped as well. So shocking advice. It's actually quite refreshing that Roy Pricer, who was the founding executive over at Amazon Studios, is saying this. Obviously, he was also a Disney executive, so it is actually good to hear that there are people who were kind of in these executive positions. Obviously, he's not there anymore. He got Me Too'd, basically, but there were people who kind of think like we do, at least maybe not all the way, but they clearly are much more aligned with the way that we think about these things rather than what someone like Jennifer Salke clearly thinks about this stuff. So I do find that refreshing. And he agrees with us. I mean, how many of us have been calling for this Rings of Power show to be retconned, to be obliterated, to be removed? How many people were doing the same with the Disney Star Wars films, right? I mean, so it is refreshing to hear this from a former executive. He also notes that these male skewing shows should not be turned into big female draws and claims this thing is ridiculous by asking this set of questions. Why on earth would you do that? Has it literally ever worked? I mean, I feel like we've been saying this time and time again, and obviously we've come up with a number of hypotheses as to why they do this. I think the one that I'm most inclined to believe at this point is one I've been talking about most recently, is the fact that this is all done to basically push agendas, right? And I don't think it's all done to change the culture. I think, as Brian Niemeyer says, now it does change the culture, but it's also more used to buttress kind of government policies and reinforce those. And I think there's lots of evidence to that, and that's why we continue to see them doing this stuff over and over and over and over again, right? Even though they're losing money and it's not working. So I think that's kind of my ongoing theory with this, and they've clearly driven people like Roy Price out of these positions where they would be able to not engage in this type of behavior. So that is also something interesting as well, because again, he's the guy who's now asking, why on earth would you do that? Has it literally ever worked? He's asking the questions that we've been asking for almost a decade now or more. In many cases, some of us have been asking this question more than a decade. Instead of trying to take these male skewing shows and turn them into big female draws, Price suggests that Amazon find female skewing shows. He suggests the next Maisel, Atlanta, The Bear, Fleabag, White Lotus, etc. In my opinion, a no-brainer would be new adaptations of Jane Austen's works. Those are obviously very popular among women, still popular today. So I think that is definitely something that you could easily do, and I don't think that there are really any kind of copyright issues with that. Now, I'm not really sure exactly how that works, but everything I've seen is it looks like a lot of that stuff is in the public domain, so I don't see why you would have any issues doing adaptations of that. Another, I think, very apparent, obvious idea, I'm surprised no one has done this yet, is adaptations of Nora Roberts' romance novels. I know tons of women read those novels. I mean, she's written over 225 romance novels, clearly extraordinarily popular, clearly, obviously, a big audience there. And then not only that, but you potentially get access to her science fiction and police procedurals as well that she's written under various pseudonyms: J.D. Robb, Jill March, and Sarah Hardesty. So those seem to be like obvious choices for Amazon to do that if they wanted to do that. Now, obviously, I'm sure there's lots of other options in mind as well. And Price kind of kept his own cards close to the chest on that. He also noticed that Amazon should develop some dramas and comedies, but they must have a single focus, and it must be great scripts. He says the company cannot get itself bogged down in its diversity plan, relationships with specific talent agencies, how to promote its next show or movie with its current show, something that we see Marvel Studios is want to do. It seems like every single show that they're making now is just an ad for the next show or the next movie, etc., and they're not focusing on fantastic films. They're not focusing on that great script, which I do think was something that they used to do before the Walt Disney Company took over. You used to have great scripts. You look at Iron Man, you look at Captain America, First Avenger, you look at the first Thor film, and then even up to that first Avengers film. Now, obviously, you have the post-credit scenes and everything that they did, but those were post-credit scenes. They were almost detached from the main film. They were teasing something far into the future. Now it's basically like, oh, this is what we're going to do in our next film. Make sure you tune in to Captain Marvel because she's probably going to play a role in Avengers Endgame, so you better go watch Captain Marvel. And that's why we stuck her end credit at the end of Avengers Infinity War. So you go and watch Captain Marvel. And obviously that was extraordinarily effective at the time, but I think people now have caught on to that, and you can see the waning box office there. So that's obviously a huge, huge problem that Amazon needs to avoid, and we see that problem with Marvel. And then he also says like various deals that you might have with various production companies and things like that. So instead of like, obviously some of these things are things you need to be aware of as an executive, but he says the singular focus needs to be on great scripts. And interestingly enough, that's actually something that James Gunn has talked about over at DC quite often. I'm not sure that they have the great scripts over there, but the people that they're working at, like Tom King, that I don't think that guy has written anything that I would call good since this. He wrote some Vertigo comic that was about his time in Iraq, and anything kind of superhero has not been good. It's been. I would say that it's mediocre to bad. It has not been good. Anyway, and that's one of his like top people over there on his team. Finally, he says that Amazon is well positioned, given it has an audience willing to watch TV. He kind of cites that it's number 2 behind Netflix. Obviously, I think he talks about the Freevee and there are other things that they have and incorporates that all. But he says like that is an audience that they have, and clearly there is a customer base for that. And then obviously you can point to the fact that I think Reacher has been in like the top 5 in the Illuminate ratings since it's come out, its 3rd season has come out. I know I've been a critic of the content of that show, and I'm still a critic of the content of that show, but you can't deny that it has been a commercial success when you're looking at viewership numbers and minutes watched and things like that, and it's just behind things like 1923, the Yellowstone spinoffs, and then obviously just whatever popular drama happens to be on Netflix for the week. I think it's been Adolescence, and then they have something called The Residence now, which is about like some crime caper in the White House. People seemingly are watching that. And so he notes that because they have this audience, they are well positioned, and people are willing to pay, obviously, for Prime Video. Obviously, it does come bundled with your Amazon Prime, etc. So that is actually a good thing. And he says that they are well positioned, and they also have the money. They have the money to make things that could be great. And clearly, they have not chosen to make things that are great. They've chosen to make things like the Rings of Power, like the Wheel of Time, and the things that they have made that are great, like the Terminal Lists, are few and far between. And it's just not enough for a TV production company, and that is why Jennifer Salke is no longer there. So that is what Roy Price's suggestions are. I'm loving it. We've been saying this, I feel like, for years now, and it's good to hear that an executive, even if they're a former executive, is saying it as well. But let me know what you guys make of what Roy Price had to say here. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always, always speak the truth.